There was a time when your surname was more valuable than gold, before anyone asked how much land you owned. Before they cared how wealthy you were, they asked one simple question: what is your family name? Because that single answer could reveal everything: your ancestors, your profession, your loyalty, even the kingdom you served. Some names opened the gates of castles. Others guaranteed respect in every marketplace, and a few made enemies lower their voices. Today, millions of people proudly carry German surnames without ever wondering where those names truly came from. Were they born inside Germany, or is that what history wants us to believe? The truth is, Germany didn't exist, not as a country, not as a kingdom, not even as an idea, nearly 1,000 years ago. The land we now call Germany looked nothing like the map hanging on classroom walls today. Instead of one nation, there were hundreds of tiny states scattered across Central Europe, powerful kingdoms, small duchies, religious bishoprics, independent cities, each with its own ruler, its own army, its own laws, and often its own way of speaking. A man could travel just 50 miles and suddenly struggle to understand the local dialect. There wasn't one German identity. There were hundreds. People didn't proudly call themselves Germans. A man from Bavaria proudly called himself Bavarian. A man from Saxony remained loyal to Saxony. A man from Swabia belonged to Swabia. Their loyalty wasn't to a country, it was to their homeland, their ruler, their family, and most importantly, their name. Back then, almost everyone had only one given name: Johann Heinrich, Wilhelm, Otto, Karl, Sibyl names. But villages continued growing, trade expanded, more children were born. Soon, there were 5 Johanns living on the same street. Imagine trying to deliver a message. Take this letter to Johann. Which Johann? Johann the blacksmith? Johann the miller? Johann who lived beside the river? Johann with red hair? Or Johann whose father was Peter? Confusion became unavoidable. Without realizing it, ordinary people solved one of history's biggest identity problems. They started adding descriptions. Johann the smith, Heinrich the miller, Petter from the mountain Otto beside the forest. Wilhelm the baker. At first, these weren't family names. They changed every generation. If a blacksmith's son became a fisherman, his description changed too. But something remarkable happened as towns became larger and written records became more important. These descriptions stopped changing. They became permanent. A father's name passed to his son, then to his grandson, generation after generation, without anyone noticing the modern surname had been born. Some of the world's most famous German family names were never created by kings. They were created by ordinary people. Take the surname Schmidt. Today, it is one of the most common German surnames on earth. But 800 years ago, a Schmidt wasn't simply a family. A Schmidt was the blacksmith, the most important craftsman in almost every village. Without him, farmers couldn't harvest crops. Knights couldn't fight wars, horses couldn't travel, even kings depended on blacksmiths. Every sword, every shield, every nail, every horseshoe passed through his hands. People respected the smith because they had no choice. Entire communities depended on him. Eventually, his children inherited his title, and that title became their surname, Schmidt. Another name spread just as quickly: Müller, the miller. Long before supermarkets existed, every loaf of bread began as grain, and every grain needed to be ground into flour. The village mill became one of the busiest places in medieval Europe. Farmers waited in long lines carrying sacks of wheat. News spread while people waited. Business deals were made. Friendships began. Arguments ended. The mill wasn't simply a workplace. It was the heart of the community. So naturally, families running these mills became known as Müllers. Generation after generation, the name survived. Even today, millions still carry it. Schneider meant tailor, Weber meant weaver, Fischer meant fisherman, Becker meant baker, Zimmerman meant carpenter. Every surname tells the story of a profession that once kept medieval society alive, but occupations weren't the only source of family names. Sometimes, a surname described where someone lived. A family living beside a forest eventually became associated with that forest. Someone arriving from Frankfurt might simply be called the man from Frankfurt. Years later, his children carried that identity as their own mountains, rivers, castles, valleys. Entire landscapes quietly became part of family history. Other names described appearance. A man with dark hair became Schwartz. Someone with fair hair became Weiss. Tall, short, strong, even personality sometimes became a family name. No one imagined those descriptions would survive for centuries. Yet today, they still do. Every German surname carries a hidden story, a forgotten profession, a distant village, a family tradition, or an ancestor whose life became immortal through a single name. But while these names spread across hundreds of German states, something extraordinary was happening far to the northeast. A small kingdom, poor compared to its neighbors, ignored by Europe's greatest powers, was preparing to change history forever. Its soldiers marched farther, its government became stronger, its rulers dreamed bigger than anyone thought possible. That kingdom was Prussia. And before long, its influence wouldn't stop at its own borders. It would reshape the identity of Germany itself. Prussia didn't begin as Europe's strongest kingdom. In fact, for a long time, most Europeans barely paid attention to it. Compared to Austria, France, England, or even Poland, Prussia seemed small, cold, poor, and surrounded by far more powerful neighbors. No one expected this forgotten state to change the future of Europe, but while other kingdoms celebrated luxury, Prussia invested in something far more dangerous: discipline. Its rulers believed that a nation didn't become powerful through wealth alone, it became powerful through order. Every village was organized, every official was expected to obey. Every soldier trained harder than the last. Slowly, the world began to notice. One man would transform this disciplined kingdom into a European giant. His name was Frederick II, better known as Frederick the Great. When he became king in 1740, many believed Prussia would be crushed by larger empires. Instead, Frederick shocked Europe. His army defeated enemies with greater numbers. His generals moved faster. His soldiers fought with astonishing precision, battle after battle. Prussia proved that discipline could defeat size. Soon, European rulers began studying the Prussian military. They copied its uniforms, its training methods, its tactics. Even today, many modern military traditions can trace their roots back to Prussia. But military success wasn't the only thing spreading. Prussian families began earning enormous respect. Serving the Prussian state became a badge of honor. If your surname belonged to a respected officer, a government official, or a noble family loyal to the king, people immediately recognized your status. Some surnames became symbols of authority, others became associated with courage. Many families proudly passed military traditions from father to son. Entire generations served the same kingdom, not because they were forced, because they believed Prussia represented order itself. Meanwhile, the rest of the German-speaking world remained divided. More than 300 independent states still existed. Each protected its own interests. Each competed with its neighbors. Each dreamed of becoming more powerful. Yet no one could ignore Prussia's growing influence. As decades passed, more merchants traded with Prussian cities. More students studied in Prussian schools. More officials admired Prussian efficiency. Its reputation spread far beyond its borders. Then came the 19th century, a century that would change everything. Across Europe, people began asking a dangerous question: why should Germans remain divided? France was united, Britain was united, Russia was united. So why were German-speaking people still separated into dozens of kingdoms? The idea of a united Germany grew stronger every year, but there was one enormous problem. Who would lead it? Austria believed it deserved that honor. After all, it had ruled the Holy Roman Empire for centuries. Prussia disagreed. Its rulers believed they had built the strongest German state through discipline, industry, and military power. The rivalry between Austria and Prussia became impossible to ignore. Eventually, words were no longer enough. In 1866, the two powers went to war. The conflict lasted only a few weeks, but its consequences lasted forever. Prussia's army overwhelmed Austria with astonishing speed. The victory shocked Europe. Centuries of Austrian dominance had come to an end. From that moment, everyone understood if Germany were ever united, Prussia would lead it. Only 5 years later, another war erupted, this time against France. German states that had once distrusted one another suddenly fought side by side under Prussian leadership. Victory came faster than anyone expected, and in January 1871, inside the magnificent Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, history changed forever. For the first time, a united German empire was proclaimed. Its emperor wasn't Austrian. He was the King of Prussia. That single moment changed the meaning of countless surnames. Names once known only in Bavaria, Saxony, Hesse, or Württemberg were now officially part of one German nation. Prussian identity didn't disappear. Instead, it became the foundation upon which modern Germany was built. Millions of families suddenly belonged to something much larger than their local kingdom. Yet they never abandoned their surnames. Those names continued, carrying memories of professions, villages, ancestors, and centuries of local history. Even today, when someone introduces themselves as Schmidt, Müller, Fischer, Schneider, or Weber, they're carrying a family story that began long before Germany existed. And many of those stories survived because Prussia helped unite hundreds of separate identities into one nation. But the story was far from over. The 20th century would bring 2 world wars, the fall of Prussia itself, and a future where millions of German surnames would spread across every corner of the globe. The German Empire had finally been united. For the first time in history, hundreds of kingdoms, duchies, and free cities stood beneath a single flag. To the outside world, Germany looked unstoppable. Its factories produced steel faster than almost anyone else. Its universities attracted brilliant minds from across Europe. Its scientists made discoveries that changed medicine, chemistry, and engineering. Its railways stretched farther every year, and its army, built upon Prussian discipline, was considered one of the strongest on earth. Many believed Germany had entered a golden age, but greatness often creates fear. Across Europe, other powers watched Germany grow stronger. Britain worried about Germany's expanding navy. France never forgot its defeat in 1871. Russia feared German influence in Eastern Europe. The balance of power was beginning to shift, and history was moving toward a catastrophe no one could fully imagine. Then, in the summer of 1914, a single assassination ignited a chain reaction. One alliance after another entered the conflict. Within weeks, Europe was at war. What many believed would be a short conflict became one of the deadliest wars in human history. Millions of German soldiers marched into battle. Among them were men carrying surnames that had existed for centuries: Schmidt, Müller, Fischer, Weber, Schneider, Zimmermann. Each surname represented generations of family history. Some had been farmers only a few years earlier. Others came from military families who had served Prussia for generations. They fought in muddy trenches across Belgium, France, and Eastern Europe. The war lasted 4 long years. By the time it ended, millions had died, the German Empire collapsed, its emperor abdicated. The proud kingdom of Prussia survived, but its power had been badly weakened. Many Germans believed they had been humiliated. Economic hardship spread across the country. Families struggled to survive. Inflation became so severe that ordinary people carried wheelbarrows filled with money just to buy bread for many families. A famous surname no longer guaranteed respect. Everyone was simply trying to survive. Then, during the political chaos of the 1930s, a new leader promised to restore Germany's lost pride. He promised strength. He promised jobs. He promised to make Germany powerful again. Millions believed him. History would remember that decision forever. Germany rebuilt its military. Factories expanded. Soldiers marched once more. The discipline once admired in Prussia returned. But this time, it was used for a far darker purpose. In 1939, the world entered another devastating war. Once again, German surnames appeared on military uniforms across Europe. Families who had served honorably for generations suddenly found themselves trapped inside one of history's darkest chapters. Cities were destroyed. Entire communities disappeared. Millions of innocent lives were lost. When the war finally ended in 1945, Germany lay in ruins. But another historic event shocked the world even more. The Allies made a decision that few people expected. Prussia, the kingdom that had united Germany, the state whose discipline had shaped Europe, would no longer exist. Its government was abolished. Its territory was divided. Its name was removed from the political map. After centuries of influence, Prussia disappeared, not because it had been conquered in a traditional sense, but because world leaders believed its military legacy had become too dangerous to preserve. Yet something remarkable happened. Although Prussia vanished, Prussian families did not. Their surnames survived. Millions of Germans fled from former Prussian territories as borders changed after the war. Entire families left behind homes that had belonged to their ancestors for generations. Some escaped to West Germany. Others settled in East Germany. Many emigrated overseas. America welcomed thousands. Canada received new immigrants. Australia opened its doors. Brazil and Argentina already had large German-speaking communities waiting for them. Everywhere they went, they carried only a few belongings, a handful of photographs, family memories. And one thing no government could take away, their surname today. If you walk through cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Toronto, Sao Paulo, or Melbourne, you'll find countless families with German surnames. Some still speak German, many no longer do, but every name carries a hidden connection to a story that began centuries ago in medieval Europe. Ironically, many descendants don't even realize whether their ancestors were Bavarian, Saxon, Prussian, or from another German state. Time blurred those distinctions. The surname remained. The regional identity slowly faded. Modern Germany itself changed dramatically after the war. It was divided into East and West. For more than 40 years, families lived on opposite sides of the Iron Curtain. Some relatives could only wave to one another across heavily guarded borders. Then, in 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Crowds celebrated, families reunited, and 1 year later, Germany became one country once again. Yet, unlike 1871, this new Germany no longer included Prussia. Its legacy survived only through history, culture, architecture, military traditions. And millions of surnames passed from generation to generation. Today, every time someone introduces themselves as Schmidt, Müller, Fischer, Schneider, or countless other German family names, they carry a living piece of that extraordinary journey, a journey that survived kingdoms, empires, wars, revolutions, and even the disappearance of Prussia itself. But one final question still remains. If Prussia no longer exists, why do its influence, its traditions, and even its surnames continue to shape Germany today? The answer reveals one of the greatest historical ironies of all. History has a strange way of erasing countries, but never their people. Prussia disappeared from the map in 1947. Its government was dissolved, its borders were erased, its capital changed forever. Yet something survived, not its army, not its kings, not its royal palace, its names. Even today, millions of people unknowingly carry a piece of Prussian history every time they introduce themselves. Because a surname is more than a word, it's a time capsule. It preserves stories that no history book can fully capture. Think about it, the surname Schmidt still reminds us of the blacksmiths who forged swords, plows, and armor for medieval Europe. Müller keeps alive the memory of the millers who fed entire villages. Fischer remembers generations who lived by rivers and seas. Schneider tells the story of skilled tailors whose hands stitched clothing long before factories existed. Each surname is a surviving witness to history. But not every famous German surname came from ordinary workers. Some belonged to powerful noble families whose influence shaped entire kingdoms. Names such as Hohenzollern became symbols of royal authority. For centuries, the House of Hohenzollern ruled Brandenburg, then Prussia. And eventually, the German Empire itself. Their decisions changed the course of European history. Another respected family, the von Moltkes, produced some of the greatest military strategists the world had ever seen. Their planning transformed warfare. Even today, military academies still study their campaigns. Then there were names like Bismarck, one surname, one man, yet his influence united hundreds of German states into one empire. Otto von Bismarck didn't simply create a stronger kingdom. He reshaped Europe. Without him, modern Germany might never have existed. But here's something fascinating. The most famous surnames were never the most common. History often remembers kings. Reality remembers ordinary families. Millions of Schmidts, millions of Müllers, millions of Fischers built roads, harvested crops, opened businesses, taught children, served in armies, started families. Their names became the backbone of German society. Today, Germany has thousands of different surnames. Some date back nearly 800 years. Many have barely changed their spelling. Others evolved as families migrated across Europe and eventually crossed oceans. When German immigrants arrived in America, some officials struggled to pronounce their names. Schmidt sometimes became Smith. Müller became Miller. Schneider became Schneider. Weber became Weaver. Generations later, many descendants don't even realize those names began in medieval German villages. Language changed. Countries changed. Borders changed. But the story hidden inside each surname survived. Now let's return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Who truly built Germany? German families, or Prussian families? The answer is, both. Germany gave Europe an incredible diversity of cultures, languages, crafts, and traditions. Prussia gave those divided states a common direction. Without the German kingdom, Prussia would never have had people to unite. Without Prussia, Germany might have remained divided for centuries. They weren't enemies forever. Eventually, they became part of the same story. That's why separating German surnames from Prussian surnames isn't always possible. Most Prussians were German-speaking. Most Prussian families eventually became German citizens after unification. Their histories merged. Their identities blended together. Their surnames became shared national heritage. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson history offers. Countries rise, empires fall, borders move. Governments disappear, but families endure. Every surname carries a journey through time, a journey that survived wars, political revolutions, economic collapse, and the disappearance of entire kingdoms. So the next time you meet someone named Schmidt, Müller, Fischer, Schneider, Weber, or even Bismarck, remember, you're not just hearing a family name. You're hearing an echo from medieval Europe, an echo of blacksmiths, millers, soldiers, kings, and ordinary people whose lives quietly shaped history. Because while Prussia may have vanished from every modern map, its legacy still lives, not in castles, not in armies, but in the names spoken by millions of people around the world every single day. And perhaps that's the greatest victory any civilization can achieve, not surviving as a nation, but surviving in the identity of its people. History remembers empires, but surnames remember humanity. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden stories behind German and Prussian surnames, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. What does your surname mean? And where do you think it came from? Your family name might hold a story even older than you imagine. Until next time, keep exploring history.